So given these curvilinear relationships, we actually took a different approach. We did some polynomial regressions. Looking at skin carotenoids and distance measures. And so we found that census tracking RFEI was statistically significant. We found that 1 mile and 3 mile local service area, or the local service area MRFEIs were significant, and those were quadratic. So like, again, we're trying to understand this in a more complex way. That it's not a linear relationship, it's a more complex relationship. This is indicating that positive associations this is indicating that skin carotenoids score an environment with a higher ratio of healthy outlets to unhealthy outlets. And then we had these other variables that were not statistically significant. And it seems to be, and we'll show later or a second, that the 3 mile buffer there seems to be something there. Okay, so we found that with the 3 mile MRFEI service area, that there was a positive association with skin carotenoid scores, indicating that a healthier ratio of retail food outlets was related to increased skin carotenoids. The 1 mile MRFEI and distance to supermarket variables were not significant. So this is why I encourage, like, whenever you're doing research around like exposure in the food environment, a lot of times people throw out the 1 mile idea. Most people don't shop a mile within their residence. And so I think it's more important to look more broadly. All right, so as I said, really interesting. We found these differences in relationships by objective versus recall-based dietary measurement. So, what's going on there? Is it measurement error or bias? Is it inherent differences in what's being captured with the Veggie scores versus those recall-based dietary measurement approaches? With the MRFEI significance, it's suggesting that there's something about the mix of retail and how that influences people's dietary patterns more so than just direct distance to a supermarket. So if people are exposed to like a higher ratio of fast food and all that, then they're probably less likely to get fruits and vegetables. This, as it shows, there's a pretty complex relationship between the food environment and fruit and vegetable consumption, and it's displayed in the curvilinear relationship. The two supermarkets where customers were recruited from were discount supermarkets, which may explain why immediate proximity may be related to lower consumption. So maybe the people that live in lower income areas, now understand that with mixed use and more affluent urban areas, this may be different, but more generally, I think that if the people that are living closer to these commercial areas generally tend to be lower income, and so that may explain some of this. So now we're going to move to the next study. So this is looking at small food stores, so more like corner stores, convenience stores, that type of thing. So different type of retail environment. So we're again looking at GIS measures relative to shopping at that small food store. And so we had 22 different small food stores across North Carolina. We ended up having around 692 participants, so a little bit bigger sample. And we did customer intercept surveys after they purchased an item. They did surveys and bag checks. So we geocoded their residence and the store address. We looked at the distance in both miles and minutes from the participant's residential address to the store where they were surveyed at. So we know that, hey, this is where they shop. So, we know that that's valid. We did this based off road network distance. We also looked at store urban rural designation. So dietary measurement, again, we used the Veggie meter, 3 times average. We also used the NCI fruit vegetable screener again, and we also looked at sugar sweetened beverage intake using the BRFSS survey items. Sorry, there's a typo there. So we looked at bivariate correlations between the distance and time variables with the skin carotenoids. We also did a linear mixed model to look at the relationships or associations between skin carotenoids and the different GIS-derived variables, as well as shopping frequency, because we think shopping frequency is related to access. And then we had these covariates. We also were interested in doing a mediation analysis to examine the frequency of shopping as a mediator between distance and dietary outcomes while controlling for the covariates. And so the average Vegemeter score for this sample was 235.8, which makes sense that it'll be lower because this is people that are shopping at a convenience or corner store relative to a supermarket. The average fruit and vegetable servings per day was 3.8. The average sugar sweet beverage intake was 2.1 times per day. Those who live significantly closer to the corner store, a small food store, both miles and minutes, were Black participants, people with income lower than $25,000 per year, and those who were not employed. Participants that had previously bought fruits and vegetables at the store where they were surveyed lived a shorter distance in both miles and minutes to the store. And so what we're kind of seeing here is that particularly for certain populations, particularly lower income populations, they may be more dependent upon those closer stores, and proximity may be more significant than a more affluent sample. So I think that's important for us to consider. And participants who live closer to the store also shop more frequently at that store, which makes sense. So again, that's supporting this idea of distance decay, right? Or that, proximity matters, particularly for this group. Participants who shop 1 to 2 times per week had significantly higher skin carotenoids compared to those who shop 3 to 6 times per week. So what we're seeing here is that if you shop less at the corner store, you actually had higher skin carotenoid scores. So they're using these corner stores a lot, but what they're buying isn't healthy, is basically what this is saying. Skin carotenoids are positively associated with distance to the small store from home in miles. So again, this is saying that the further you live from the corner store, the higher your skin carotenoids are going to be. So again, saying that, hey, these people are using these places, but they're not great influences, at least not as reflected in the skin in their Vegemeter scores. And we didn't find a statistically significant association with self-reported fruit and vegetable intake or with sugar sweet beverage intake. So this was something that was unique to the skin carotenoid or the Vegemeter score. So maybe we're finding stuff that's we're getting a little bit more nuanced with these Vegemeter and these scores. So we actually didn't find any support for the mediation analysis. So with shopping frequency being a mediator between distance and dietary measures, and we'll talk about what we think is going on there. But the percentage mediated effect of distance to stores is only 6% on skin carotenoids. So again, I don't like showing tables and presentations, but I just wanted to show this to kind of highlight that, again, we're kind of seeing some different relationships. I think it actually kind of adjusts a little bit, but basically the point was that we're seeing different relationships based off of the dietary measurement approach, or whether it's objective measure versus the skin carotenoid or Vegemeter scores. And I think that's interesting, something we should think hard about. So people living close to the store where they were surveyed tended to shop there more often. So again, proximity seems to matter. Purchase the highest proportion of foods from that store. So people were also pretty dependent upon this store for their food compared to people who live further away. And this is consistent with the distance decay theory. Shopping frequency, again, we didn't see that as a mediator, but what we think is going on is that frequency and distance are interconnected, but maybe not, but they are also distinctly relevant. All right. So there's something, they're connected, but there's also like some unique things happening with each of those. And so we can't directly say that they're the same thing. There's some unique things going on. And then again, this idea that proximity may matter more for low income and unemployed. So this is just some related research that was kind of focused on the small food store project. This is led by Stephanie Gilcott Pitts at ECU, all the overall kind of intervention stuff. So future research, I think we need more research. Again, with my very quick review, I think these were the only 2 Vegemeter GIS studies in the literature. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, or let me know if there's something else out there. But we need this in like different settings, population groups, food environments. So if you're collecting Veggie meter data, I encourage you to also collect residential address data, work address data, whatever. Get some addresses and let's map it. I think there just needs to be more. We need to get a better feel for what's going on here. We need to integrate other geographic assessment methods like GPS data to get a more nuanced understanding of people's travel patterns. Examine the Veggie meter scores across the 5 dimensions of access. So GIS really gets just at the accessibility, so distance and availability, like yes, no, is it there? But we don't really get at the other important dimensions of access. And then we also need to examine it in different ways. So I've done some work that we didn't talk about around effect moderation with GIS and Veggie meter scores. And so if you're running an intervention project, especially one that's a food access based one, and you're trying to understand if people who live closer have a different relationship than people that live further away with that intervention, then do an effect moderation analysis based GIS measures. So me and Linka are working on some stuff around GIS and Veggie meter. So I think she's talking about agro maybe today, but anyways, we have some really cool stuff coming out soon. And then I'm always open to collaboration, so feel free to reach out if you want to add some GIS fun to your study. And that's it. So thank you. Feel free to reach out to me by this email.
Thank you. We'll open the floor up to questions for Jared, discussion. Feel free to just speak up or put something in the chat and we'll moderate.
I'll start, Jared. When you started talking, I was like, oh my God, GIS, this sounds amazing. I really want to do this. Then you kept talking and I was thinking, it sounds really hard and really complicated. So anyway, I loved what you shared. It really kind of hurt my head to think about, but it makes me want to reach out after this and talk about 20 ideas that popped into my head to do GIS work in the future, but you have to do it because it really hurts my brain.
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, from the research perspective, like honestly, I always tell people just put address questions in your, or some type of geospatial question into your surveys or into your study. And, you know, ideally it could be built in at the beginning, but a lot of times, you know, there's other stuff that you have to look at. So I understand, but as long as you have that data, there's always an opportunity. It's whenever people approach me and they don't have that data where I'm like, well, it's pretty limited in what we can do if I don't have, you know, some level of geographic information. I mean, you can get creative, but yeah, I mean, I always tell people like, yeah, just added some type of address question or something, and then reach out to someone like me, and more than happy to figure out all the GIS stuff for you.
Great.
Jared, I have a question. This is Cass from Texas.
Hey.
I know for a while, you know, like a long time ago, it was harder to use Reference USA as a database for areas that weren't as developed. Can you speak to maybe developments and like the comprehensiveness of Reference USA as a database in terms of being a more like accurate, reliable source? I know there's a lot of data. I'm sorry, I'm still not feeling well. I know that there's still a lot of data cleaning involved, but just what you can share from your experience, especially knowing you tend to work in more like rural, peri-rural areas.
Yeah, that's a great question. That gets back to the geocoding thing that that I was talking about earlier, and how important it is, and how like I really should spend most of my time talking about that, because I do think it's the cause of a lot of the confusion in the literature, because you have to really understand what you're looking at and be careful about the cleaning process if you're using business databases like Reference USA.